With all the gun violence in America today, Texas Governor Gregory Abbott just passed a new bill into law that potentially will make law enforcement's jobs all the more dangerous while adding on to the amount of gun violence in the country already. Personally, I spent a few years in the U.S. military as an infantryman, so I was around firearms the entire time, and I was taught in the proper use and handling, as well as being a double major in administration of justice and political science, with the intent to, after I get my degree, go into a career to federal law enforcement. That being said, in my humble opinion, Texas's new constitutional carry law is not only irresponsible, but poses a danger to the public and law enforcement through the allowance of anyone to be able to carry a firearm either openly or concealed without any prior training or any prior licensing. Now, anyone growing up in America over the last 2 decades can tell you that they've seen a definitely uptick in the amount of gun violence in the country, and I wanted to cover a few things today in my presentation, mainly the issues and problems that this bill presents and that comes about from this bill. I want to bring up some counterpoints and counterarguments that an opposing stance may have. And lastly, I want to cover some possible better solutions to the issues that this bill tries to address, as well as how this bill could be improved and changed. But first, let's start off with the issues that this bill creates. First of all, the law enforcement community at large is strongly opposed to this because it provides more risk to them during their job. In an interview with CBS Austin back in April, Police Interim Chief Joseph Chacon stated that guns are easier to obtain than ever before and has become more common for people to use them. Weakening training regulation and effectively eliminating training requirements is not the right direction that we should be going right now. Additionally, in that very same interview, he stated that stripping away those safeguards will make our streets less safe and will make law enforcement jobs harder. Something I want to add on to that fact is there's no logical or practical way, honestly, for a normal person or even a police officer to tell that if somebody in Texas is carrying a firearm, whether it be open or concealed, if that person has any restrictions preventing them from the carrying of a firearm in the first place. But moving on from that, another point I want to point out is that it's going to add more injuries and deaths due to accidental gun accidents. Because according to the CDC's report in 2019, 486 people died due to accidental shootings. And according to the organization Aftermath that deals with trauma and gun violence, their statistics on gun death in the US reported back in 2020, between the years of 2006 and 2016, 6,885 people died in the country due to accidental gun deaths. So now that we've covered some of that, let's move on to maybe some arguments that an opposing stance may have. Well, one thing is, it's not very well supported in Texas because a majority of Texas voters do not support unlicensed carry in the first place. In a poll conducted of voters by Madison Dong for the University of Texas and the Texas Tribune in 2021, it showed that only 59% of Texas voters, over 59% of Texas voters do not support unlicensed or unpermitted carry of firearms. And here on this graph, you can clearly see the demographics of that. Additionally, an argument that comes up a lot is an armed citizen will stop an active shooter situation. Most of the time, this is not the case. According to the FBI's 2018 report on mass shootings, out of all the mass shootings, only one of them was stopped by an armed citizen. The rest were not. But moving on from that, let's talk about some ways that we can better solve the issue that it tries to address. Well, one way we could do that is to try to better prevent gun violence. And according to the Prevention Institute, to reduce and stop gun violence, one of the ways we could do that is engage responsible gun owners and gun dealers in the conversation on how to solve things and integrate them into the actual solution. Another thing we could do is try to pass more sensible gun laws in the country. And then lastly, we could insist that gun owners and people who want to carry weapons, whether it be open carry or concealed carry, go through licensing and mandatory training to not only cut down on gun violence, but cut down on accidental gun deaths themselves. Now, as for changes of the bill itself, the only real change I could see happening is a complete 180 from what the bill is right now. From instead of allowing anyone to just be able to carry a firearm without any training, any permits, a mandatory training and permit session for anyone who wants to carry a firearm, whether it be open or concealed in the state of Texas, or for the country for that matter. Now, to try to wrap things up, let's go over what we talked about today. One, I discussed that this bill creates a lot of issues to the problem that it tries to fix. Secondly, I covered some potential counter arguments that an opposing stance may have on the topic. And lastly, I threw out some possible better solutions to the issue that the bill itself tries to solve. In conclusion, gun violence is such a prevalent issue in America today that if you want to get involved, there are a few things you can do. One, you can vote. Voting is your civic duty, and it is the best way to affect change. Now, that could be meaning voting for politicians who support better gun control, or politicians who support more common sense gun laws. Another way you can do that is through activism or advocacy. Just going out there and trying to help out with organizations that make it their job to fix these issues can go a long way. And then lastly, you could just raise awareness. It is ridiculously easy now with the internet and social media that at the tip of your finger, with just one click of a button of share, you can raise awareness on a topic like never before.